So now that we understand how to do these basic edits to materials and to lighting and the camera and so forth, I want to get a little trickier, and we're going to try to set this image up so that we just keep the object itself and its shadow, but none of the background, so that we can composite it into either a still image or a video if we're using After Effects or something like that. Okay, so to do this, I have downloaded to my desktop this image I want to use for compositing called Kitchen. So if I open that up, I'll see it's just this real estate photograph, but it gives me this really nice empty tabletop area that we can stick an object onto. And also those edges are apparent so that we can see how the perspective is operating. Okay, so I'll head back to Rhino, and let's hide our rendering stuff for now. I'll go to Perspective, right-click all the way down to Viewport Properties. That's going to pop up here on the left, and then down near the bottom I have an option for Wallpaper. So if I change Wallpaper and make that Desktop and Kitchen, that image should pop up here in the back, and it might be hard to see currently because of this item, so I'll just hide that temporarily. Okay, great. So now, and I can show this in color if I want to by unchecking gray, whatever makes the most sense for you. So now the cool thing is that I can kind of rotate this object around, and then I can also pan it. So panning would just be kind of dragging it straight down to try and get this thing to start to sit on the tabletop correctly. And if I bring back in my, here, let's go ahead and maximize this. If I bring back in my plane, it should make it a little easier to do because you can see this still has kind of an awkward, it sits there in an awkward fashion. So let's make a new plane. And I'm just going to draw one like this. So sure enough, if I draw the plane like that, you can see that that's really distorted compared to the photograph. Let's switch back over to wireframe here. Okay, so the reason for this is because there's probably a different lens on the camera than the virtual lens that I'm using in Rhino. So to change that around, I go back to the properties of the viewport, and I look right here for lens length. And instead of 50, maybe let's switch to something more like a 24 and see how that'll change things. So that's starting to look better, right? So I rotate this around, I pan it around, I zoom in a little bit, pan it some more, and we're going to start to get that thing sitting in the space correctly. Now this still isn't exactly right. You can see this line's pretty close, but then back here on the end it really starts to get distorted. So I just want to get that thing close enough. Maybe I move this to 22, zoom in a little bit, and so forth. So you certainly don't need to watch me do this over and over again. When you do it, you can try to get it a little closer than I have, but that's pretty good. Now, of course, if you're working with an object that's not just a straight cube, it's also going to make your life a little easier because, you know, frankly, it's just not going to be as apparent if it's slightly incorrect. So let's make our lives a little bit easier. So I'll make a cube, and then I will align that cube with the bottom. Oops, let's try that again. Align, B for bottom. I don't know why it doesn't want to do that. Well, anyway, what I'm basically trying to do is to get it just to sit up here on top. Something like that. All right, cool. So if I wanted to, I could just now hide this plane right here, render this little ball, and then take it over to Photoshop and composite it in. But the issue there will be it won't be casting shadows on its environment. And in order to get it to do that, there's actually some tricks that we need to pull off here. Let's also maximize perspective, and then we'll collapse this in a little bit so that perspective has the same viewport ratio, more or less, than the image does. Great. And I'll switch this back to rendered. Okay, so that gives us kind of a sense of what's happening with the lighting and so forth right now. Okay, cool. So if I head back over to my V-Ray asset editor, remember we have a directional light in addition to the sunlight that you may or may not be showing right now. Oh, and here's another thing we should do while we're at it. If I right-click Perspective, I can go down to Set View and Named Views, and then I can save my current view as ball on table. So that way, if I need to rotate the view around, you know, so say I do something like that, I can go back to Set View, Name Views, and I can reload ball on table by double clicking it, and then I get it back to here. Okay, cool.